here. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar offering. This is part of the workshop series that is being given by our New Jersey Family Engagement Hub partner, SEL4NJ, and we are here for empowered kids, building self-control and responsibility. And so now I just want to talk a little bit about the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. We are the statewide Family Engagement Center, and our project is all about strengthening partnerships and collaborations between families, schools, communities, and youth with a focus on helping them all develop and build strategies around family engagement, because family engagement has been proven to be the measure of success. So the more engagement that families have with school districts, the higher the outcomes for students. And family engagement is a collaboration. It's not just the families plugging in, but it's the educators, it's the community-based organizations. So to do so, we provide technical assistance to selected districts, and we also statewide do these trainings, these webinars that are done monthly. So I invite you please to go onto the Eventbrite and see what offerings we are doing, because we've got something great happening every week. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Erica. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kim. Okay, and welcome everybody. It's wonderful to spend the evening with you. So as Kim mentioned, our workshop, our webinar tonight is called Empowered Kids, Building Self-Control and Responsibility. So let's get into it. So we know that some of you might be on your cell phones, or you might be driving. So if you are able to share in the chat box, we would love it. We would love to know where you're zooming. But if you're not able to, that's okay. Just something to consider. Where are you zooming in from? If you could enter that into the chat box. How old is your child or your children? And then the question we have for you tonight is, when your child struggles with self-control, what does it usually look like? So if you wouldn't mind answering these three questions and entering them into the chat box, we would love to hear from you, where you're zooming in from, how old is your child or children, and when your child struggles with self-control, what does it usually look like? Okay, thank you so much for already participating, Erlene. Um, Meltdowns, anger, yelling. Yep, definitely happens in this house as well. Thank you for sharing. Meltdowns, running around, loss of control, definitely. Crying and yelling. Thank you so much for offering your experiences. Sometimes our children are upset. Sometimes they have physical manifestations of stress and loss of self-control. Thank you so much for sharing, Tatiana. Yeah. Yep, some of those physical signs of distress. Thank you all so much for sharing. If you want to continue, sorry, I'm going to keep going here. Arguments, stomping, slamming things like their phones. So that's the older set of children that we work with. Thank you for sharing where you're calling or you're zooming in from. So it looks like a real range of ages here. So we're excited to share with you some of the strategies we have to support you with your children. I'm going to keep advancing the slides here, but please feel free to continue to enter into the chat any questions. Oh, that's okay, Debbie. You have an 8-year-old. Yes, I have an 8-year-old too. Um, so I'm going to keep going, but please feel free to continue to enter your thoughts and ideas and questions into the chat. And Danielle, if you wouldn't mind just monitoring that, that would be great. Okay, so just a quick introduction to me, and then I'm going to hand the mic over to my colleague, Danielle. My name is Erica Brenton. I've been an educator for over 20 years, and I started as a New York City public school teacher. I became very invested in social emotional learning, which we'll talk about a bit tonight. And then I became a consultant for the School Culture and Climate Initiative. And I live in Montclair, New Jersey with my husband and 2 children. So I have a middle school child and an elementary school child. So similar ages to some of the folks who are Zooming in tonight. And for in my free time, which I generally don't have a ton of, but I like to go on long walks and read and spend time with my family. All right, so I'm going to hand the Zoom mic over to my colleagues, Danielle Scarpa, who's going to co-present with me tonight.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Danielle Scarpa. I spent over 10 years as an inclusive classroom teacher. I have my master's degree in inclusive education. Um, I've also been an educational technology instructional designer, kind of bridging the gap between, the in-person and online world. And I now serve as an educational consultant, focusing not just in my expertise in those other 2 areas, but also as well, Erica and I have a lot of SEL and a lot of professional experience in common. Like Erica, SEL has been a huge part of my professional career, and now as a mom to 2 young girls, even more so. I've served on school culture and climate committees. I've been a teacher liaison for intervention and referral services teams. So if you have school-age children and you've reached out to get some assistance with your students, um, that's typically where you might see me. I've also created SEL-focused enrichment clubs for elementary students. So taking the work that I've done in the classroom out, and I've also provided that information to parents as well. I live in Cedar Grove with my husband and my almost 6-year-old. It's very important that I say that. She's very upset when I say she's still 5. She will be 6 in October, and 3-year-old. And when I have some free time, I love to attend Broadway shows. I'm a huge I Love Lucy fan. I love to travel, and I love a great book and a leisurely cup of coffee. If it's iced, it's still iced by the time I'm done. If it's hot, it's still hot by the time that I'm done, which, is rare now, but happy to be here and help out tonight.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Okay, so I'm going to just do a quick review of our agenda for this evening and some of our objectives, and then would love to hear from you what you're hoping for from this webinar. So all of this that we're talking about tonight, responsibility, self-control, really falls under this bucket that we're going to refer to as self-management, and we'll get into that in a little bit. We'll show you what self-management looks like in schools. So maybe what your children are getting in terms of their classroom teacher instruction and everything they're getting from their school environments. We hope to provide you with a lot of practical tools that you could use right away with your children. We'll review some common challenges. So what are some of the things that we see with our children that can be problematic? And then we're going to provide you with a whole ton of resources so that you could take with you, and we hope that they're really helpful. And so by the end of this, I hope that we have a better understanding of what self-management is, and then that you could walk away with strategies you could use with your children right away. So I just want to stop real quick and just ask, and you can please, it looks like the chat box is really active tonight, which is fantastic. What's one thing that you hope to take away from this webinar? And your answers will also help guide us a little bit as we're moving along so we can address some of your questions and concerns and some of the things that you're really hoping that we talk about. So if you wouldn't mind just entering that into the chat box, we'll take about a minute or two and then we'll move on. Okay, so it looks like folks are starting to chime in. So self-regulation skills, definitely focusing on behaviors, supporting children with special needs, and also balancing our own needs. That's very important. Thank you for sharing that. Some succeeding in school and socialization skills, great prevention. That's really interesting and very important focus, and we will definitely be sharing some of those strategies with you. So thank you for entering that in. Okay, I'm going to move forward, but please feel free to continue entering your thoughts and ideas into the chat box. Danielle will help me out with monitoring some of them. And Danielle, you're muted, so
Yes, here. Thank
okay.
you.
Um, Okay, sorry, I just saw this one about bullying and defiant behaviors. Okay, so a huge range of things that are coming up, and we hope that we will be able to target, most of these, and I think we will. So let's move on. So just to set the foundation for tonight, I like to open up with a quote. I have two quotes here. And one is a quote by Abraham Lincoln: "Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most." And so the idea with that is that self-management is really this life skill. And really, we want to help kids make good choices, even when those choices are really hard. And then I love this to sort of balance that quote out. Sometimes I sits and thinks, sometimes I just sits. And so by Winnie the Pooh. And so the idea here would be that, self-management is really also just about slowing down and pausing and just being. So we'll focus on a couple of those areas tonight. And so just to take the lens back a little bit. So all of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight are in the frame of social emotional learning. And this is something that we've reviewed in webinars past and talked a lot about. But with social emotional learning, we hope that children are able to do the following things, which is a tall order. So manage their own emotions and behaviors, have empathy and show care and concern for others, that they're able to solve problems effectively, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. So anytime you hear the words SEL or social emotional learning, this is really what we're talking about. And the last webinar, we focused on self-awareness. That webinar, I think, is posted on the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub website. So if you want to check that out, it's a fantastic webinar. Tonight, we're going to move on to the next topic, which is self-management. And so self-management, the definition of it is that we hope that our children are able to manage their emotions and thoughts and actions in different situations so that they can achieve their goals. And that includes coping with stress and anxiety, persevering through challenges, and taking action to create positive change. So everything we'll be talking about tonight will fall under this umbrella of self-management. So why are we even focused on self-management? Well, here's a little bit of research to share with you. So strong self-management skills are linked to success in school, relationships, and life. A lot of the things that you all entered into the chat box are just personal things that you are really, wanting self-management to sort of support. And so here's another angle of it. So students in social emotional learning programs are actually shown to have an 11 percentile point gain in achievement compared to peers, and that was done by a study in 2011. Self-discipline predicts academic performance more strongly than IQ, which was also done by a study in 2005. Students with strong management skills are more likely to graduate high school, persist in college, and succeed in careers. And self-management really supports lower stress, fewer risky behaviors, and healthier relationships across life stages. So we know the importance from our own personal anecdotes. And then here's a bit of research supporting all the other ways that it can support a child as they move through school, as they move through life. So we're going to take a quick video look to see what does self-management look like. And so this was taken in a school, and it's a fantastic like what does self-management look like in action? So I am going to toggle my screen here and play for you. It's just a short 4-minute video, but it really brings to life what we're talking about with actual students, which I love. So let's get started.
When students are aware of their emotions, they are better able to regulate them. They can learn how to manage stress and control their impulses. They are also better able to motivate themselves and work towards their personal and academic goals.
Self-management is not just understanding who you are, but what are you doing with that information? How do you behave? How do you use that information to achieve goals, to work hard towards things? How do you manage your feelings? So we talked about understanding your feelings and self-awareness, but what you do with that anger is about self-management. How do you turn your self-awareness and your feelings and your emotions into positive actions so that you can have agency and advocacy for what you believe? These are all part of self-management and critically important for not just school, but work and life itself.
As adults, as teachers, as parents, we're responsible for helping kids by creating a regulating environment. So for example, in a classroom, it's really important to think about your environment and how you're helping kids regulate. So if you have a chaotic classroom and there's always tons of noise and maybe you have stuff all over the walls and you're not really organized yourself, that might be chaotic to kids. When you walk into your own classroom, do you feel calm? Do you feel regulated? Do your kids come into that classroom feeling safe? Because that's number one. We have so many kids with trauma and they're coming from homes that we can't even imagine what they're going through. And they walk into a classroom already completely feeling dysregulated. So something as simple as greeting each student at the door, smiling, using their name, that helps calm and regulate kids. We know there's a lot more kids with challenging behaviors. So let's give them an appropriate way to regulate themselves. They know at any time they can go to the safe corner, sit in the beanbag, take deep breaths, and usually we can have visuals there to remind them.
So self-management, I think about, stop, think, act. With elementary children, it's very easy because they're often engaged in that play, whether it's at recess or through games. It's easy to have those conversations because of, conflicts that they have that we think are very minute, but for them are really great. With middle schoolers, I think through scenarios, going through skits and going through scenarios and really giving them real life examples versus having a fight or argument. What's the best way to address your conflict? What's the best way to communicate how you feel? That's an adult skill that you'll need for life. And I think we have to stop and really point out to kids, hey, this is not okay. There's a better way. Or really allow them to manage the problem for themselves and just be there as a facilitator to guide that process.
I'm feeling really frustrated at Johnny again because he took my truck. Well, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm not going to grab him back or I'm not going to punch him because that's the wrong thing to do. So for little ones, it's teaching them that they have the control to take a breath, to take a moment and think about what they're going to do.
When we're talking about teaching self-management and how kids can practice that, we're really helping kids think through ways to stay focused and to stay engaged and persevere. So maybe during a math lesson, we're providing opportunities for them to work through multi-step problems and think through multiple solutions to those problems. We also may be asking students to think about how to control their impulses to shout out answers, really by giving them some norms and routines for how they can get their voice heard. We also want to encourage students to have their voice heard in positive ways. Having them at the table and having them feel heard gives them a better sense of who they are and how they can use their voice in positive ways. So we really believe elevating youth voice is an important part of helping students develop positive self-management and contributing to the greater good of the school.
Okay. Just going to take one moment to toggle back here. Okay. So I know that that was a very classroom, school-focused video, but I'm just curious. I think there's a lot of ways that we can see ourselves as parents take some of these, and Danielle and I are going to share those strategies with you in a moment. But just quickly sharing anything that resonated for you or any thoughts that came up during that video. We'd love to hear what's on your mind. If you wouldn't mind just entering your thoughts into the chat box. There were a lot of different things that were shared. And Danielle, if you could call out when you see something, I can't see my chat box right now. So if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
Arlene has shared one thing that resonated for her was creating a regulating environment, having Arana set routines help to control impulses, right? Knowing what to expect. Kids love things that are predictable, right? Knowing exactly that helps them feel safe and secure. Making sure that they feel heard as well to control impulses. I know that we mentioned at the beginning, as I was looking through the chat, that when our children are frustrated, they're yelling, screaming, stomping. And as frustrating as it is for parents, one thing to keep in mind is that behavior is communication. They may not have the right language to use, and the way that they're communicating may be frustrating, but that behavior is coming from a place of I'm trying to get this out, and I need help. So I think a lot of the things that we saw in the video, not just in the classroom, like Erica mentioned, but also at home, are easily replicated in both spaces.
Yes. And I think this idea too that Arlene shared about making sure that children feel heard is something that we can do no matter if we're a parent or a teacher, that their voice matters is so critical. So thank you so much for sharing that. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Danielle, who's going to share a bit more about how schools foster these skills. And Danielle, I'll monitor the chat box a bit while you share. Okay.
Okay. All right. So we saw a lot of really great examples in the video that Erica had shared. So you will see some similar things over the next few slides. But one thing that I will just mention as a note is that these are suggestions of things that I've used personally in my classroom or that I've seen my colleagues utilize. And I'm going to try my best to give examples, not just for elementary age students, but also middle and high school, as well as how you can kind of transition some of the things that you see in the classroom to home as well. So one of the things that the video mentioned, which we just spoke about, was creating like a calm space or a calm corner, having an area when children are feeling overwhelmed, when they're feeling overstimulated, that they can go and take a break. And so in a classroom, that could just look like a separate space in the corner of the room. Or when Erica and I were speaking about this, the classroom picture that you see was actually my classroom. And so we started with the intention of having one space in the corner, but that doesn't always work for every student. So it's really just having a space that allows them to get out their feelings in private to them. That could mean facing away from other students. That could mean sitting just outside the door in proximity of the teacher, but just a place for them to kind of recenter themselves and then be able to return. And so many things that are helpful in order to do that and to help students feel supported in that is to have visuals, to have strategies that are already there. I know Erica will talk about some in a bit, but some things that were really helpful for my students where I would have just pictures of feelings and they would put a picture or a Velcro on the feeling that they were having. If they were so frustrated where they couldn't get it out. And then once they signaled to me that it was okay for me to check in with them, we had something to go off of. It was their way of kind of communicating their feeling without saying, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling frustrated, because sometimes it doesn't come out verbally, it comes out emotionally. And then also providing suggestions for ways to calm down. I will calm down by taking a deep breath. I will calm down by giving my body a really tight hug. I will calm down by, jumping up and down 10 times. We think of calm as just peace, but for some students that are feeling really impulsive, calm is also regulating the physical part of our body. And so by, providing some deep pressure output, by providing some squeezing input. All of those things help to calm the body in very different ways. And again, this is really personal for each individual kid. But by having some suggestions and having some things that you can try, that really makes a big difference. Something else that you might see and you might notice in this picture, or maybe in some of the classrooms that your children are attending, is flexible seating, having multiple options. Options are huge. Options provide choice for students. It helps them feel empowered. It helps them to be self-reflective and think about what spaces work best for them. So the way that my classroom would be designed is when students would come in the classroom, everyone had a place that they went to every single morning to unpack and pack up. That was their home base. That was the place that helped them to feel centered when they came into the building. Once we broke off into our learning time after I would give my instruction, they had the opportunity to choose where they would work. For some classrooms, they have a choice every day. They get to go off and just find a space and work. So for high school, middle school age students, that's definitely appropriate. But for elementary students, especially students that are still needing support in making choices, that would be part of our Monday morning meeting. We would sit down, talk about our weekend, go over the day's agenda, and then we would decide on a place that we would like to work. And so part of our community building at the beginning of the year, which we'll talk about also, was how to choose a space, setting up routines for trying different places, thinking about what works, what doesn't, but eliminating so much furniture, so many chairs, it automatically helped students feel a sense of calm when they walked in our classroom. There was space not just for them to sit and think, but also for them to just have space to move if needed. Erica, if you want to go to the next one.
Yep.
Okay, so in thinking about building community, right at the beginning of the school year, traditionally teachers will sit down with students and they'll go over their roles and expectations. But there is a really great educational researcher named Alfie Kohn, and his approach to classroom management and behavior is about working with students. So there's two schools of thought. So there's the doing to, where you're telling them what to do, and the working with. And it's been proven that students do much better when they feel that they are involved in a collaborative process. As the teacher, as the person in charge, of course, you get the final say, but by inviting students to share, by giving them the opportunity to determine what they feel is important, helps them have that buy-in to then feel like they are truly a member of our community. So you'll notice this is an example of our classroom rule chart. It says we, not just for students. It doesn't say students will show respect. That we signifies everyone that walks in, every teacher, every paraprofessional. That's the expectation we have for anyone that enters our space. And in having that invitation, right, inviting students into that process, I found has tremendously impacted the behavior moving forward, because they feel a sense of pride in that this is something that we've deemed important. These are our house rules. And so at home, this translates to, what are some of the things that are important to us as a family? In my family, for example, we talk about with my daughters that, we always tell the truth. We'll never be upset with you for telling the truth. In our house, we don't keep secrets. So if there's a problem, you talk to us. And they know that that is just one of our norms. It's one of the things that we've deemed important. Piggybacking off of that, students feel safe and feel supported when they know what to expect. And in school, while things are very predictable by having a schedule, modeling and identifying really clear routines and procedures is huge. My favorite quote is, you can do it well once or do it over and over and over again. And so by taking the time to really set routines with intention, practicing, troubleshooting, reflecting, it helps tremendously by January, when we've had things in play, or if we've been out, I've had a substitute. My classroom could run itself because students knew exactly what they needed to do, how they needed to do it. And this provided them with the peace of mind to then focus on the new things that were coming up, what we were learning, what we were doing. And so at home, if mornings are hectic, having a chart just to say we pack our backpack, we put our shoes by the door, just having spaces or having ways that we do things then allows us the space and our children the space to then think about the other things of the day. Um, but it makes a huge impact. And if for some reason things aren't going well, reflecting back and taking time again, as we've moved further into the school year to say, hey, we're having a tough time with remembering to put our things away neatly. Let's take some time now to practice that again. Just constantly reflecting back not only helps as a whole group, but it also helps students individually as well. Next slide. Okay. So I thought that the research that Erica shared about how success, self-management provided success for students more strongly than IQ. I thought that was really interesting because I think we tend to think of achievement as being smart and having, like high scores on SATs as we get older. And so thinking about learning and thinking about the ways in which we learn best, we want to shy away from thinking about just smartness and achievement as having a limit. And so growth mindset is something that's really important in thinking about, we can learn every single day. Learning is limitless. If I've achieved a goal, I set a new goal. And that's really important. I've had students that have been tremendously high achieving in my classroom that would complete the activity, and would do it well, but had a very difficult time with feedback, especially in writing. It was very hard for them to understand that my work can always be improved upon. It can always get better because they were very fixed in thinking, I've done everything you've asked me to do. I've checked every box and that's it. And that can be frustrating as you move through life because if you're in the workplace and you're working on a project and you're given feedback, how do you handle that? How do you collaborate with other people? And so, thinking about learning as, always experiencing something new, always thinking about ways that we can be self-reflective. It really helps us when we get into difficult moments where we need to kind of take a step back and go, hey, how can I handle this? That is definitely something that helps with setting goals and being self-reflective. And then the last thing that I'd like to share is we're very intentional about the power of our words, especially in the younger grades, but even the older grades too. I find that students, especially, our children, they want to please us genuinely, right? Children by nature want to please the people in their lives. But we also want them to know the value of pleasing themselves and having, self-worth. And so by thinking about, when we're doing something or we're complimenting children, we want to make sure that that compliment isn't just for us and what we're looking for, but it's also for them. And so instead of saying things like, oh, I love this picture you drew me, which is true and it's beautiful. You can also couple with that. It's clear you worked so hard on that. You must feel so proud. And by doing that, it really shifts the expectation instead of making other people happy, and achievement is based on, making other people feel a certain way. It helps students feel that way about themselves. It kind of turns the mirror around to them and says, oh, I did feel so proud of that, or I worked really hard on this. Just reframing our language and just in subtle ways really makes a tremendous difference. My daughter came home from preschool with a story about a student in her class having a really tough time, and he was having a meltdown. And she was just like, Mom, he was just having a tough time. I've had a tough time. And so thinking beyond just the behavior is something that has been really helpful. And by providing feedback in that way, it's helped her then to be more self-reflective.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That was really so informative, and just listening to you, I came up with a ton of ideas. Yes, thank you so much. So we're going to shift focus here out of the classroom, although Danielle did share a lot of information about how we can use these tools at home as parents. But we're going to really think now about our home. And I know from the chat box, some of us are grandparents, some of us are, parents, some of us are working with children. So however you can relate to this information, you just take for yourself. So we're going to look at these 3 buckets in terms of how you can foster these skills at home. So emotion regulation. And then what I want you to do is I want you to think about, because we're going to give you a lot of tools I want you to think about maybe what is this one category that you need the most? So we have emotion regulation. So maybe your child, and from the chat box before, it sounds like there were a lot of meltdowns. There's a lot of, dysregulation. There's a lot of anger, right? So emotion regulation is really helping children to recognize, label, and calm their emotions before they spiral. So if this is the area that you feel that you need the most, then let's focus on that. Or if you feel that your child really struggles with impulse control and responsibility. So here we want to teach kids to pause, think, and follow through on their commitments. So we'll give you a lot of strategies for that. And then the final bucket, focus and persistence. So if this is an area that you feel your child could help, so this really helps children to stay engaged, keep trying, even when tasks feel difficult and challenging. So let's go through each bucket and I'll share a few strategies with you for each. So in the emotion regulation bucket, we can, and this has been mentioned a few times in the video, maybe Danielle mentioned it, but we can do breathing exercises. So there's a few examples. There's the 5-finger breathing. And I don't know if any of you were in the last webinar we did, but we actually practiced together. So I'm hoping we could do that together today. But 5-finger breathing is you just take your 5 fingers, and this is good for all children, no matter what your age. It's actually really good for adults too. So what we do is you take your finger, and every time you go over your finger, you take a breath in. And so we'll actually do it together. And then every time you come to a valley in between your fingers, you're going to take a breath out. Breath in, breath out. And so I don't know about you all, but that just instantaneously calmed me down, made me very relaxed. So we can do this in any moment. And a 5-finger breathing is a really easier thing to remember. We can also do birthday candle breathing. So it's like you take a deep breath in and you blow out the candle. And you can have your children do that 5 times when they're in the heat of the moment. So any kind of breathing exercises are good for all ages of children, adults. It's a good practice. Then we have naming feelings. So before, and this is something that someone wrote in the chat box, is they wanted to be preventative. And so the more that we're aware of our emotions, the more we can sort of understand where we're at, and the more we can prevent ourselves from becoming dysregulated. So there's some wonderful tools out there. There's an app called the Mood Meter app, which Danielle, would you mind just entering that in the chat box? It's called Mood Meter app. And it really helps you to understand what zone you're in. Are you feeling high energy, unpleasant, which would be the red zone? And then you can find different labels of different feelings you might have. Are you feeling low energy, unpleasant, which is the blue area where you're maybe a little sad or, feeling a little down. The yellow area is pleasant and high energy. So maybe you're feeling excited, happy, joyful. Or if you're feeling in the green area, it's more pleasant feeling, but lower energy. So that might be, I feel restful or calm or, easygoing. And so the idea would be that the more we get to know ourselves, the more we can really identify how we're feeling. And the more we can say, okay, I'm feeling, a really a pleasant emotion and I want to stay here, or I'm feeling a really unpleasant emotion and I want to shift away. And those are some of the other examples that Danielle gave. If you're feeling an emotion and you want to shift away, there's some we could provide you with strategies for how you can shift from one emotion to the other. And so that brings me to my next tool here, which is a calm down kit, sorry. And so these are things that really are very personal to your own child and maybe even to yourself. But really it could be an area of your house. It could be like a little basket. It could be something in their room. And it's just all the things that help them to calm down. So, my older son really responds well to reading books. My younger son responds really well to just being alone in his room and playing music. So it's very personal, but however your child identifies, and you can even ask them, um, how do you feel that you calm down best? And then providing them with those ideas and strategies. You can even have them printed on a card or just as a reminder. But that's a really nice suggestion and strategy. And then all of these things are going to be better received and are going to be more effective when they're practiced calm. So if you're in the heat of the moment, if your child is having a meltdown and you're like, let's practice 5-finger breathing, and it's just going to maybe like add fuel to the fire. So what I like to do with children, with my own children and with children I work with, is taking them when they're not in the heat of the moment and practicing all of these things so that when they are dysregulated, they can access them more quickly. They can see how they work. They can feel how good they work. So all of these are much, much better strategies practiced when calm and then when needed after that. Okay. So here are some tools and ideas if your child really struggles with impulse control and responsibility. So these I think a lot of these are good for younger kids, they're good for older kids, but we can first think about choice and accountability. So, you can either, so I have, my younger son has to read after school. So he doesn't like to read. So I've gotten in lots of power struggles with him where I'm like, well, you have to read. And then it becomes an argument and it's just, so he has a choice. He could either read to himself, he could read out loud to me, or I could read him a book, right? So he's going to read, it's going to be there, but there's some kind of choice there. If he doesn't get to go on his devices. And so, whatever age your child is in, you can provide them with some level of choice. You either do the dishes, or you either clean your room before dinner or after dinner, but you don't get to go out until your room is clean. Okay, and then we have just some visual reminders that you can put up around the house. So, like a stop and think kind of visual reminder. And so, a really nice strategy for stop and think that you can teach your child is to just pause a moment. What am I feeling in this moment? What are my choices? And what might happen if I choose this one? And sometimes when we say stop and think, it can add fuel to the fire, as I'm saying a lot. There's clearly some power struggles in parenting dynamics. But if you have a reminder up on the wall, if they have something in their room, it doesn't have to say stop and think, and you practice those 3 steps, it could really help to get them to regulate their impulse control. There's natural and logical consequences. So sometimes we can just let our children fail and they can learn on their own. So if you go outside without a jacket on, you're going to be freezing, right? And that's just something that's going to happen. If you are an older child, and you don't do an assignment, you're not going to get a good grade. And that's, going to be a consequence both in school and at home. So we can let our children sort of discover their own consequences on their own. And sometimes those can be the best learning opportunities. I'm just sorry, I'm noticing really quickly. Oh, Danielle, you put some comments in the
Yes.
chat box. Okay, good. Yeah, and in a moment, I'm actually going to ask which of these resonates for you all the most. I know we're doing a lot of talking, so I just want to also let you know that we're very curious to hear what is feeling right for you. Responsibility charts, goal charts are super helpful. So you could say, like, every day my goal is to read for 10 minutes, or every day my goal is to, my older son, his new goal is to like do something creative every day. For younger children, maybe a goal would be, brush their teeth in the morning. And then you could have like a really nice, almost like an incentive chart where if they did that goal every day and you gave them a star or you gave them a sticker, maybe they earn some kind of reward, or they earn extra TV time, or they get a high five if you're not into rewards. But responsibility charts are really nice and really good for all ages. Okay, and then finally, oh, actually, there's one more slide after this. So this is if you're in that focus and persistence bucket. So a couple of ideas for you. So this messy room here. So, sometimes our children need us to break things down for them. So instead of just saying, clean up your room, we can say things like, first, clean up your floor. Second, make your bed. Third, uh, put your clothes away. And that kind of aligns a bit with what Danielle said earlier about having like a checklist in the morning, like a nice visual checklist, right? So we sometimes need to break things down for children when they are having trouble focusing, or maybe they have trouble following through with tasks. So we can really help them by breaking down each individual part of the task that we're asking. A work break cycle is really nice for academics. So sometimes it's hard for kids to have, especially, I mean, I have a middle schooler and he kind of struggles with having a lot of unstructured time after school to do homework. So we'll say, work for 30 minutes and we'll set a timer. Timers are like my best friend. And then you have a 10-minute break. And then you work for another 30 minutes or 20 minutes or something. And then you have a 10-minute break. And that really helps him to structure his time. I also find as an adult that it's really helpful to have a work break cycle. Like I'll say to myself, I'm going to work for the next hour, and then I'm going to actually set a timer and I'm going to go outside and I'm going to get a breath of fresh air. So really helpful for any human to practice. And then just modeling what it looks like to persist. So maybe you have a conversation at a family dinner, and saying like, I was working on this assignment. Or I was working on a work assignment. I got really like unfocused. I was thinking about doing, all these things for the family. And it was really, really hard. And so here's something that got me back on track. So the more we can model and the more we can talk about the things that we are experiencing as adults, the more it humanizes the process for kids and they really respond well to that. Um, and then just generally good strategies, and then I'm going to be done talking, um, is just anything that you could do as a family to reinforce self-management. So Danielle already provided this idea of just having a morning checklist that everybody can see, right? Like we all know what the checklists are. I don't hold the information. I'm not getting in a power struggle with you. It's right here on this list. A shared family calendar could be really helpful, color coded, excuse me, that we can all see. We know the expectations, they're previewed before us. I know how to manage my day, you know how to manage your day, and we can manage our schedules together as a family. And then one of the things I actually love the most is a family problem solving meeting. You could do this with any age child, but sometimes I find that when things start getting a little haywire in my family, I need to call a family meeting. And a family meeting will look like us sitting down and saying, there's a problem. The problem is X, Y, and Z. How can we all work together to fix it? And that really contributes that idea of child voice. So it's not just me coming up with a solution. It's not me coming up with a consequence. It's all of us as a family. Sometimes I'll even write contracts where I'll say, like, this is what we talked about. Here's what we all agreed to. We all sign it, and keep it posted on the refrigerator. So these are just sort of everyday management routines that really help for the whole family, actually. Okay, so now that we've given you so many of these strategies, hopefully you found one or even more than one that really resonated for you. So if you would not mind entering your thoughts, reflections into the chat box, we would love to hear from you. What resonated the most? Maybe you have a question. There's a couple folks who asked some questions. Um, in the beginning. So we're going to come to those at the end. I think Danielle would be a nice
Yes.
idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but anything that resonated for you, we'd love to hear.
As we're waiting, actually, Erica, two things that you mentioned are things that we currently do with our children. And even though they're very little, they've been tremendously helpful. The clock that you showed, where half of it was red, where you can actually see the elapsed time, that's really helped us to sustain attention, even on like fun things to work on. So my daughters love Play-Doh, and Play-Doh is great, and then it becomes chaos. And so one thing that we've tried is to set a timer for just 10 minutes. Like I'll set everything up and say, okay, I'm going to start dinner. They're at the kitchen table next to me. For these 10 minutes, your job is to work on Play-Doh and my job is to get dinner ready, and then we'll check in. And I found that they love the concept of the clock and seeing the clock and watching it count down. And so that's helped minimize like at least some interruptions on things, unless it's of course an emergency. And something else that also kind of piggybacking on that, many of our board games have this, but there are many different hourglasses, and there are some that are bigger than others that are 5 minutes, 10 minutes long. I used to have them in my classroom, and they were also helpful because students love the concept of beating the clock, or the reverse, which is setting a stopwatch, particularly like in the morning, for example. If that routine is really stressful, I'm going to set a stopwatch to see how long it takes us from when we start getting ready to on our way out the door. And then I would do something as simple as writing it on a sticky note and say, tomorrow, let's see if we can beat the clock, making sure that we're still doing all of the things that we need. Um, it's gamifying. That's like language that we use. Like it's gamifying what could be really mundane, like things to think about. And it kind of meets kids where they are, where it's fun and engaging, but also really purposeful.
Really, I love that idea. Timers are our best friends. Okay, so Arlene shared, thank you, Arlene, chunking tasks, responsibility charts for all members, and having family values posted. I love that idea. How are we all contributing to our family values? Are we contributing? Are we going against our family values? That's a fantastic idea. Any other ideas that were helpful? Oh, Kim loves your gamifying idea, Danielle. Everything is
Everybody
better
loves a
than
good theme. It has to, if it's engaging, it can be the exact same thing, but it's the way that you explain it that makes it fun.
Yes.
When you mentioned family meetings, we'll do that. And sometimes I find that a really good buy-in is doing it during dessert. Like we've had dinner and we're like thinking about tackling something kind of tricky, but like we're having cookies and milk. So it's like everyone is naturally happier. Um, and then some language I like to use with younger children is my job is to keep you safe. My job is to help you. But I'm having a tough time. We're having a tough time. How can we all help me do my job? If my job is to get you to school on time, how can you help me do my job? What can you do to then also help with that? And kids love having ownership over things. And for as much as they know, like I'm responsible for certain things, they don't always realize that they can be helpful in certain ways. And so you're inviting them into that instead of just saying, we're not doing this or I need this from you. It's how to kind of bring it all together. Any ideas for impulse to be rude?
Actually, this brings us, so we have, let's see, 6:54. So I think what I'm going to do, because Lisa, this is a great question, and I'm gonna go through a couple of common scenarios that we come to. So I think hopefully this will answer this question. So let's go through some of and sorry, the reason I just looked at the time, I'm going to go through these a little bit quickly, just so we can get to the end and get you all some of those resources that we shared in the beginning that we would share with you. So what are some of and as Lisa just brought up, there's some common challenges, right? We no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do your calm down strategy, like not doing 5-finger breathing. So maybe your child stomps away, like doesn't want to do the breath work, says that's dumb. Maybe they feel that the strategies are being forced on them, or or they're a punishment. So here are some suggestions, and Lisa, hopefully one of these could answer some of your questions, and we'll go through a couple of different scenarios. So you can offer some choice. So would you you could either do this, you could squeeze your stress ball or take 3 deep breaths, or what would work better for you to calm down? We also talked about practicing this one calm. So, whatever challenging behavior you're coming across, working through that in a moment of peace and calm, you can come back to that and revisit that a little bit better when there's some challenge. Um, and really modeling, right? Like, I'm also feeling frustrated right now, and here's how I'm going to calm myself down. So we model the positive aspects of that behavior. Okay, here's another one. So if we're, giving our child a task, let's say we do all of these wonderful strategies, we chunk it, we give them checklists, all the things, and they still just can't do it. It's just, I don't have the tolerance. It's very low frustration tolerance. So we really want to think about like even dividing that into even smaller steps, right? So with my younger son who doesn't like to read, he cannot read independently for 10 minutes. So I'm like narrowing it down to these very, very, very small, minute things. So let's say our expectation is our children brush their teeth in the morning and they're struggling with brushing their teeth. Maybe like, okay, I put the toothpaste on, you put it in your mouth, I turn the water on, right? So we really want to just have them experience any measure of success. Um, and then really giving them lots of praise, right? So like, man, that was really hard and you kept trying and I'm really, really proud of you. Like we didn't get to the 10 minutes today, but you tried. So finding them in those moments when you can positively reinforce anything will really help them to feel that pride and feel good about what they're doing. And then finally, and this maybe comes up a little bit more with teenagers, and the eye rolling or like you can't make me do anything, so like I'm not doing my chores, I refuse, like maybe this is even with teenagers but younger kids too, so maybe they're feeling like they want to be more independent, they're testing their limits, there's obviously a lot of power struggles, so really inviting them into the conversation. So what would feel good for you to do chores? We have to get our chores done, but what would feel good, what would feel right for you in these situations? We talked about having natural consequences. So if you don't do your laundry, then you actually don't have any clean clothes. If you don't fill up your water bottle for school, you don't get to drink, or you have to drink from the water fountain, you don't get to drink from your special water bottle. And then really just practicing staying calm and consistent. So like responsibilities in the house are actually not negotiable, but we can make them more fair. We can work together. So hopefully one of those was helpful. And Elisa, what we'll do now is we'll actually we're going to skip this reflection now because we want to give you the information for the closing resources. But there were some questions that came up that we said we would troubleshoot at the end. So after Danielle shares some of these resources with you, if anybody who had a question that we didn't answer in the moment wants to stay on, we're really, really happy to talk a little bit more. Carrie and Kim, I hope that's okay. We won't stay on for very long, maybe just a few extra minutes. But and oh, sorry, Randa asked, will slides be posted or emailed? I think that the slides are emailed. Anyone who registered will get the PowerPoint and then also all of these resources that Danielle is about to share. Yes, you're welcome. They will be emailed to you. Okay, so let's just do some closing resources, and then if anyone wants to stay on for a couple of questions, we can stay on a little longer.
Okay.
Danielle, off to you. Yeah.
Thank you. So we provided a ton of information tonight, but sometimes it can be really overwhelming to think about places to get started. And so we've tried to include some things now that make your life a little bit easier and give you something to walk away with. So one of the things, like Erica mentioned, is we did create a shared Google Drive folder for all of the different domains that we talked about, emotional regulation, impulse control. When you click on or scan the QR code, you'll see folders for each of those different domains and just a couple of suggestions, things like a recording sheet for having big feelings, examples of different breaths to use, cards that you can hold up, nonverbal cards that you could hold up, just really anything that kind of will give you something tangible to have right away. is always helpful. And then there are two videos that I've shared that you can watch for yourself as well as with your children. Kind of meeting them where they are. I have younger children, so things like Sesame Street is huge, and very much applicable at any age. It only gets funnier as you get older. And Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, which is based off Mr. Rogers. Um, just sharing songs, books, and making that a part of your everyday life. I always find that that's the best way to kind of include things that, might be tough conversations otherwise. We do a bedtime story every night. And so my daughter, I have a very strong-willed 3-year-old who is in her no phase. No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't like that. And so kind of very similar to what Erica mentioned. And she loves the Pigeon series by Mo Willems, which for the reader, their whole job is to say no. And the pigeon comes up with all of these ridiculous reasons why he doesn't want to take a bath, he doesn't want to go to school. So she's getting the satisfaction of saying no, but also realizing the consequence of that. And so by bringing in literature in that way, tying it into bedtime, but making it intentional, or there are great books. One for breathing is called Breathe Like a Bear, where there's good night yoga. You can read them at night and it provides you all of those strategies in a time, like Erica said, that is calm. So when you get to a frustrational place or your child gets to a frustrational place, you have something to circle back to. Oh, remember when we read that book and we saw the birthday candle breathing? Let's try that now. Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood for younger children has tons of jingles. There's songs on Spotify. So there's one that's like, when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. And I find that even my older child will remind my younger child, hey, like, and she'll use that language. And so they're short, they're quick, but it is tremendously helpful. And kids love anything that kind of ties into things that they like. So there's two great videos. One's longer than the other, but Cookie Monster really is the poster child for someone needing to master self-regulation. And so by, both the song and the video, they're just some ways to kind of address the needs that you might have, but in a really fun way.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Danielle. So I think what we'll do now is just stay on for a few extra minutes. There were some questions around, first of all, I think someone had asked a question about how do we bring some of the practices from that we presented today into schools? So how do we get our schools to use these wonderful practices? Danielle, I don't know, since you have more direct sort of classroom experience, if you have any suggestions for, I'm sorry, I can't access my chat box
No,
right
it's
now. I
okay.
forgot who wrote
Um,
it. But
it
anything,
was, I think, Arana. I hope I'm saying, oh no, not that. No, I saw it now. It disappeared. Hold on one moment. How do we bring this? How do you get schools? Oh, I think it's Debbie. How do you get schools on board with this? Um, One great place to, thank you, Debbie, sorry. One great point of contact to kind of start with is if your child has either a social worker or a guidance counselor in the building, they're a great in between the classroom teacher and the rest of the school staff. Their job is to provide support. And so I think that they're a great contact to reach out to, as well as if you're having a tough time, if those resources are available to you to email and say, in addition to the classroom teacher, hey, we're having a tough time with this. Do you have any suggestions as to things that we can try? I find that they have always kind of helped support the classroom teachers, but they also have a scope of age ranges that they work with. You don't. Okay. Trying to think of who
I
else.
think,
Just
and yeah, just
even a
to sort of
building administrator as well.
yeah. And I think just starting small. So even like sometimes teachers are just so strapped for time, they're so strapped for resources. Anything that you can do um, to sort of bring things in, I think would be really, really welcome. So, when I was a teacher, if a parent said, hey, I have this great idea, could I come in and show the class? Or would you ever consider using this resource? So I think teachers are open to the conversation, schools are open to the conversation. It's just about starting the conversation sometimes and offering to be a support or offering to kind of be a partner. But Debbie, what we'll also do is we'll share our personal contact information, just in case you need a little bit more information around how to approach schools. We would be very, very happy to, yeah, to continue the conversation. And then the other person, I just wanted to see if we answered their question. I think it was Lisa.
Yes.
Yes. So just some questions I think about some sibling dynamics. Um, okay, Lisa. So, oh, I'm so glad that this was helpful for you. Oh, good. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
I knew if Lisa hung in there, we'd provide her with lots of useful strategies. So I'm so glad. And I think that if anybody else has any questions they want to enter quickly into the chat box, we just have Carrie graced us with a few extra minutes. So we're happy to answer them. And if not, we loved being here with you tonight. Thank you all for your participation. It's so much help. It's very helpful when we hear your voices. So we really appreciate it. Again, these resources will be emailed to you. So you'll have everything. You'll have the folder that Danielle has with all the handouts and these videos. And again, if there's any questions along the way, please reach out to the email address that you got the confirmation from, and then we'll just yeah, make sure that we're answering any questions. Okay, Kim, should I hand it back over to you just to close
Sure.
out? Okay.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Erica and Danielle. And for those participants still here, do know that this is part of a series. So there will be another workshop happening tomorrow at 6 p.m., Building a Learning Village. So please get on and register so you can get some more fantastic information and share strategies. And then this will also happen again in October on the 21st and the 22nd, where we'll be going, SEL4NJ Erica will be doing relationship driven language building, the foundations for student success, and the power of knowing yourself. And that will be October 22nd. So we look forward to more. We are grateful for you joining us today. And thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Danielle, I'll contact you.